So in that way, if they've never heard of the Enneagram, that's fine. I explain some basic things. So there's the core motivation. So, say I'm talking with her, I go, I think this is a type 3 character. That would be the achiever. And the achiever is all about value. That is the central theme. And their core fear is that they're going to have no value or worth. And their core desire is to have value or worth, right? So that is what is going to be driving a lot of the conflict. And that is what a lot of their trauma is going to be around, moments that told them they had no value. So that is a type. So, that right there, you can already see what the inciting incident might be. It's going to be something that triggers that sense that they don't have value or worth. You already know that the climax, they're going to have to make some decision about their value or their worth in it. And that will have to be a decision that they couldn't have made without learning things along the way. So now we kind of start to see this particular journey emerge, and that is the story, and that is their story for their type.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 240 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Claire Taylor. Claire Taylor is the founder and owner of FFS Media. She also leads the story alignment services offered by FFS Media. Now, with over a dozen top-selling humor novels published and many more on the way, she can write the crap out of a funny book, and she can help bring out the humor in your story, too, without sacrificing a compelling narrative or strong character development. She's professionally edited more than 200 fiction manuscripts with experience in every stage of the editing process, from outline evaluation to proofreading. Her passion lies in telling a story that sticks with readers long after they finish the last page, and she loves helping others achieve that goal. We talk about all of this, as well as an article that Claire recently published on Medium called Indie Publishing Has a Creep Problem. And though Claire and I have known each other for several years, and we do joke a lot, there is nothing funny about the article. There's nothing funny about what's happening, not just in our industry, but beyond. And I really wanted to bring a spotlight to that. So I'm sharing that discussion with her about that in this episode. There will be immediately following episode 240, special episode 241, where you can actually listen to Claire reading the article. So for people who want to consume it in audio, thought I'd do that favor so you can listen to it in the next episode. So that's all coming up later in this episode, but first, let's hear a word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. Findaway Voices is an audiobook platform that allows you to get your audiobook out into the global market. You can use Findaway Voices to find a narrator, and they have a new marketplace that they just launched this year in basically March 2022, where you can go online and you can find narrators. You can filter by different voice types. You can filter by different styles. You can listen to samples from them. You can use Findaway Voices to find a narrator in that DIY process, or you can use their more project-managed approach where you would put in RFP details, and then one of their professionals will find you between 5 and 10 narrators that they think will work based on a variety of styles that you put in, as well as different budgets. So, some that'll cost you a little bit more, some that'll cost you a little bit less, so that you can have choice. Because that's what Findaway Voices is all about for authors. It's choice. Because if, like me, you already have a narrator that you're working with and you already have all of the audiobook files ready to go, you can use Findaway Voices in order to distribute. And you can set the price at pretty much 98% of all the platforms out there. You're in control. There's access to additional promotions, such as getting access to promotions through Chirp, which is owned by BookBub. Because Findaway Voices is there for you as the author. They're there to provide you choice in how to control your audiobook destiny. And if you're looking at how you can leverage Findaway Voices for your championing of your audiobooks, you can check them out over at starkreflections.ca/Findaway. And we just heard from the corporate sponsor for this podcast, but the podcast is also supported by my awesome patrons who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. And because I love my patrons so much, I always want to make sure my patrons get access to cool additional material and content, including ding, 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 some prizes. So, as I mentioned in episode 237, which is an interview with Angeline Trevina about her books on world building, her workbooks on world building, I have 2 winners of that from my patrons. And I also am going to have a winner for Claire Taylor's Supercharge Your Story course, which you're going to hear a little bit about. There's a free course from Claire that you're going to hear about here, but this is one of the courses that she has valued at $299. Now, Claire has been so generous as she offered to give it to me for free, but I actually just asked, maybe just give me a discount. Maybe I pay half price so I can get a deal, but that way I can also support you and support one of my awesome patrons. So, ding, 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 ding. It's prize time, and I've already just reached out to the patrons. So the way that it worked is there's 3 sort of levels of Patreon. We've got the a plot outline, which is sort of level 1, the earliest level, which is basically $1 a month, and then we have the $3 a month level, which is is first draft, and then at the $5 a month is the completed manuscripts. Those are the 3 levels to give you different access to things. And so what I do is basically level 1 folks are entered with 1 chance to win. Level the 2 the folks are entered with 2 chances to win, and then the completed manuscript folks are entered with 3 chances to win. So I put everyone's names into a spreadsheet. I then assign numbers to them. Then I kind of hide that. Then I go to randomnumber.org, put in basically the selections, and generate the random numbers. And then whoever's name is beside that number ends up getting the prizes. And so the winners so this is 30 Days of World Building, 2nd edition of 30 Days of World Building by Angelina Trevina, or A. Trevina, which you'll see on the cover. And it's an author's step-by-step guide to building fictional worlds. And so we talked about that in episode 237, if you want to give that a listen. Now, I bought all of her books for myself, 1 of each of the 4 books in the world building series, and 2 of my awesome lucky patrons are the winners. So congratulations to Alyssa Kuran and Chad Boyer. Alyssa and Chad have already emailed you to find out, can I order it from a local bookstore, an indie bookstore for you, so I can support Angeline, I should say, as well as a local bookstore in your neighborhood, maybe your favorite local bookstore, or maybe if there isn't something convenient or close for you, I can just drop ship it from Amazon. So congratulations and thank you guys for being patrons. And so the other prize, and because again, going and doing the random number draws, you'll notice it took me a few episodes to get to this one for the 30 Days of World Building. So I thought I'd just do this draw right now, as I'm producing this episode. So the winner of Claire Taylor's Supercharge Your Story course, which is valued at $299 US, that goes to Linda Hill. So congratulations, Linda. I've emailed you to reach out to figure out how we're going to do this so that I can pay for the course, but then you can have access to that. And that special thank you to Claire for that generous donation as well. And like I said, she wanted to donate the whole thing, but I want to be able to support her. And I think you'll find out why I really want to support Claire, because she stuck her neck out for authors in our community, and I want to show my support. And we're going to have a great conversation with Claire later in the episode, and again, a special thank you to all my patrons who support this podcast over at patreon.com/starkreflections. And now for a brief personal update. So a funny thing happened on the way to the Ides of March. I decided to bundle together two of my stories, two of my novels in the Canadian Werewolf series. So I've been working on the 4-book bundle and a special story to go in there that I haven't finished. And the reason I haven't finished that story is because I'm working on Lover's Moon with Julie Strauss, and I have to write chapter 15. It's in my to-do list today on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, when I have to write chapter 15 and get it back to her so she can then... Oh, wait, no, chapter 13. Sorry, chapter 13 I have to get back to her so she can write chapter 14 tomorrow, and then on Saturday I can write chapter 15, and Sunday is a day of rest in our schedule. But that's how we've been doing this, and it has been an absolutely amazing experience. I'm absolutely just loving, and I've said absolutely so many times now, but we're not going to edit that out. But this is such a fun experience as we're tag teaming, her doing Gail's point of view and me doing Michael's point of view, having such a fun time doing this, because we kind of know where the manuscript's going, and we know a whole bunch of things, but we don't know the specifics of the scenes the other person is writing. So it's a real treat when I got up this morning and I saw that recent chapter that she sent to me, and we're leaving notes in the manuscript back and forth with each other, having this conversation as we're adjusting and tweaking. It's just been, I can't express how much fun and how much learning I'm doing about my own writing and character development by doing this in collaboration with Julie. And so that's been going well. But then I'd mentioned at the beginning, before I got sidetracked myself, was the box set. So the reason I'm not working on that story for the box set is because we have to get this manuscript done, and as he picks up the piece of paper of this awesome schedule. So we've got to get this finished by the 26th. Is that what it says? 25th. And then we each have 2 days of revisions. And then we get this over to, at the end of the month, we get this over to our editor so that she can do a pass, and then we can do our cleanups, etc. Because the book is coming out in May. So we'll have April to do rewrites and stuff like that, get everything aligned so we can get that done in May. So that's going well. But that other box set, that story for the other box set, is taking a back seat. So I'm not going to be able to write it, obviously, till the end of the month. Because I'm also working on Accounting for Authors with D.F. Hart. And we've sent that out to some early readers now. Before the edit, we just want to get some feedback and tweak it, and then maybe make some changes. We've already made some changes from an early reader. And then we'll get that to our editor for very quick edit. It is fortunately a shorter book, so that won't take as long. But back to the box set again. Man, this guy gets distracted with himself. But the box set, I saw Kobo Writing Life had a promotion, 25% off digital box sets for March. And I thought, oh, okay. I've got a digital box set, Nocturnal Screams, which I can put in there. But I was like, oh, it's too bad I don't have my Canadian Werewolf box set. But I was interviewed by the guys on Sci-Fi Saturday a couple weeks ago, and they called me out on something. They said, let's be honest here, Mark. Fright Nights, Fear and Longing in Los Angeles and Fright Nights Big City, that was really just a 200,000-word manuscript. You split it into two, right? And that's not what it was. What it was I was writing Fear and Longing in Los Angeles. I realized that the big, larger story arc of the Proud Fighters of America, the neo-Nazi bad guys, who are trying to create a race of supervillains, that overall story arc wasn't going to be wrapped up in one book. I had to wrap up another, like sort of the main theme for that book. I wrapped that up, and it can be read as a standalone, and Fright Nights Big City can be read as a standalone, but technically there's one big long story arc. So they kind of called me out on that. So I thought, what the heck? Let's do a 2-book bundle, digital bundle, and I called it Fears and Frights, or a bundle of Fears and Frights. And Juan Pedron went and designed sort of a fresh cover for me that looks amazing. Then I used BookBrush to create a 3D sort of looks like a physical box set of it. And that went live today, where it went live on the 15th, on the Ides of March. And I put that live on the 15th so that it could be in this promo that started today on March 17th on Kobo in Canada, US, Australia, and New Zealand and the UK. And it's 25% off. It's March 25 is the code to get 25% off, or is it MAR 25? Anyways, it'll be in the show notes. It's starkreflections.ca if you're interested, with a link to the sale as well as to the bundle of Fears and Fright. So that's kind of what's been going on in the personal arena lately. But that's it for the introduction. That's it for my personal update. And without further ado, let's get on to this interview and conversation with Claire Taylor. Hey, Claire, thanks so much for coming on the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. It's good to be here again.
So I think I was lucky enough to get to see you in Vegas this last November 2021. And it had been, how many years? Maybe only 2.5, right?
Yeah, something like that. But, there was that thing that happened.
Yeah, there's some sort of
kept
something in the air.
Away. Yeah.
Yeah. Snow, right? It was all snow. Yeah.
That's what it was. It was
global snowfall happened.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
That's what we experienced in Texas, definitely.
However, it feels like I talk to you every week, or almost every week, because you have assumed the role of the co-host of the Sell More Book Show. How long has it been since you did it? Is it almost 2 years now?
It's been a little over 2 years. Yeah. I started the first week of January 2020. So
oh my God, prior to this big snowfall hitting.
Yeah. Prior to the snowstorm. Wow. Yeah. We had no idea. We just thought it was going to be a clear, smooth sailing. So, but it's been great. I really enjoy getting to chat with Brian every week. Obviously he's a dear friend. And so, being able to do that and, work with indie authors and be able to help where I can in this community is a lot of fun. And it keeps me up to date on the news as well.
Yeah. Because for anyone who's not familiar with the Sell More Book Show, it's a weekly show, and it takes like the top 3 tips of the week and then the top 5 news items of the week. And then you guys use that as sort of a launching point for discussion.
Yeah, it's fun. And Brian and I have very different views on a lot of things. So I love that I can raise different points and we get to see different perspectives on the stories.
So what was it like? Obviously you listened to the show. Brian, I know you and Brian have been friends for a long time, because even on the earlier incarnation of the show, when Jim was his co-host, he talked about doing a humor podcast with you. And so it was kind of cool. But what was it like, kind of stepping in? So you're watching like a news program and then all of a sudden you're the anchor. How was that experience?
Yeah, well, luckily, it's just like a Zoom. We just recorded on Zoom. So it just felt like a conversation with Brian. So that was good. I don't think it really occurred to me how many people were listening to me each week. Right. And I think that was probably for the best.
You would have been too nervous?
I think it would have messed with my perspective somehow, and it's very hard to read live. Like, it's hard to read aloud, and so when I was first starting, I was having to pick up tricks because I was like, I haven't read aloud since I was like a teacher, so it was that was actually the hardest part.
Was the news bit, like the actual 2 lines of news or whatever?
Reading off news. Yes. That was the hardest part for me.
Oh my God. You need a teleprompter too. So it looks like you're looking at the screen.
Yeah. Just looking straight into the soul.
So I want to get into a little bit of your fiction, but before I go there, let's talk about FFS Media and the stuff that you do to help authors. What sort of inspired you to start doing that?
Well, okay. So this was something I was offering. It was a service that I was offering my friends, which has now become the story alignment, which is jumping on a call and helping them fix the story problems they were having. And I've been an editor for like a long time. I've edited hundreds of manuscripts. So the story stuff is just kind of like second nature to me. So it's really fun for me as well. So I was, helping out my friends. And then I realized, hey, I could probably make this available to more people. Obviously I would have to charge for my time. But that's how that sort of started, this idea of the story alignment. And then it grew into more and more and more services, especially once I started feeling confident and noticing that more people were open to my use of the Enneagram in fiction. And so it started, to sort of flourish. And then that spiraled into me helping authors use the Enneagram to align their author life. So they were writing the kind of stories that mattered to them, right, and connecting with the right audience and bringing forth this sort of genuine part of themselves so that they didn't get burned out. Because a lot of people will, they'll pick up a genre because it's selling hot or something, but they don't really connect with it. Or they think this is the way I should run my business. And then they just run out of fuel because they don't have that deep internal motivation. And that is what the Enneagram is about. It's a personality profile built around internal motivations. So that is how I started going. And then I just was like, well, I have all this information. I can't stop thinking about this. Maybe I should organize this into some courses and into some YouTube videos. And that's kind of how it all started.
Cool. So I'm curious about, so when an author is thinking, hey, I think maybe the story alignment is for me, is this something they reach out to you with after they've finished their novel, at the beginning of a project, midway? Like, what's the optimum point, or is there one?
There really isn't an optimum point, because no matter where you are, we can get you to the next level. So it's an hour-long call with me, and it's a conversation. I have an intake form. I have a questionnaire. So I can easily catch up on where you're at, what you're struggling with, and usually we can get through those problems and then have like a half hour left for me to be like, hey, here's some opportunities where you can bring back in these elements that, like, I see your subconscious knew it and they were putting these elements in this story. So let's bring them back in a really satisfying way, or let's sort of tweak, I know we hadn't talked about the climax, but let's look at this climax and make sure that it's really hitting all the points. So then we take it to the next step. And we can do that when you're plotting your book or writing your beats. We can do that when you're just brainstorming a new series arc. We can do that when you've already written the book. Maybe you have a draft. We can talk about it ahead of revisions. Or if you've already published it, sometimes people will come and they'll want to revamp book one of a series they've already published to try and increase read through and that sort of thing. Or oftentimes it's like, it was their first book, right? Book one in the series, it was their first book. Right. And now they've grown and they want to know how they can do the least invasive surgery to make it stronger and get that read through going. So we can talk about any of that because it's all related to that core story structure and your protagonist's journey.
Okay. All right. Now, and before I do this, I have to go visit my doctor and I have to get an angiogram, right? That's how I understand this? No.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what is an amiogram actually? Did I pronounce that properly the second time? And not angiogram, amiogram. And what is it called?
Angiogram of the heart.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's the heart of your story, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I need to know that the 9 types of the angiogram.
Yeah. But do I have to have done an angiogram beforehand, or is that part of the intake form where you're pulling the right information that helps you? Or
So, I mean, a lot of the time, especially with the story alignment, the Enneagram is not a part of it necessarily. Once we start to look at the character, there's usually a type that someone has been writing them as without realizing it, because these are very instinctual psychological types, Okay. So we'll find that, and there's usually some debris that doesn't belong there, right? Like that character wouldn't do that. And they may know that sort of subconsciously, but I can explain why. And I can help give those words to it. So, cool. So then we really align that character with that type and make it all flow really well. So in that way, if they've never heard of the Enneagram, that's fine. I explain some basic things. So there's the core motivation. So, say I'm talking with her, I go, I think this is a type 3 character. That would be the achiever. And the achiever is all about value. That is the central theme. And their core fear is that they're going to have no value or worth. And their core desire is to have value or worth, right? So that is what is going to be driving a lot of the conflict. And that is what a lot of their trauma is going to be around, moments that told them they had no value. So that right there, you can already see what the inciting incident might be. Right. It's going to be something that triggers that sense that they don't have value or worth. You already know that the climax, they're going to have to make some decision about their value or their worth in it. And that will have to be a decision that they couldn't have made without learning things along the way. So now we kind of start to see this particular journey emerge, and that is the story, and that is their story for their type. But it can look a lot of different ways. We haven't even talked about genre, right? This can be a story of sci-fi. This can be a romance. This can be any genre of story, and it's going to look very different. So it's actually not as simple as it may seem at first, that it's like, oh, this is going to look like every other story of that type. And it's like, well, no, not really. You can do some razzle dazzle, right? Like, we're not talking necessarily about literary fiction. Like, I used the Enneagram for my books about, paranormal cop comedy stuff, like, it doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be dry. It's just, it helps you make decisions for what your protagonist would do.
Wow. So if an author is several books into a series and is curious about maybe moving in a new direction, or maybe even is stuck, is this something that would be beneficial to them? He asks knowingly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I wasn't really using the Enneagram when I started writing one of my series. And then I was like, oh no, I've made some mistakes along the way. Okay. And once I started using it, looking back a few books, like, oh, that doesn't really align, but I think I got away with it. Now I'll do better.
Okay. All right. So you have used it yourself then?
Oh yeah. I use it with all of my fiction. And, if you don't know when you start out, if you're a few books in, I know it can kind of be like, you want to put your fingers in your ears and go, la, la, la. Like, I don't want to know what the Enneagram type is, because then I'm going to suddenly see all these, errors and stuff in previous books. Right. And it's not, you're probably subconsciously getting it very close to what it actually is. And you can always just do it better. Like, you've got your readers through. Great. It's only going to get better from here.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. It's going to just keep getting better, keep growing. So let's talk, I want to take a diversion. Let's talk about your fiction. So you have multiple series, just at least under one of the names I know, but talk a little bit about, because you do write in different genres. Can you tell us just a little bit about the different series that you write in?
Yeah. So as Claire Taylor, which is my comedy satire pen name, I have the Jessica Christ series, which is a modern day comedy about the daughter of God being born in Texas. And it's a 7-book series. I've completed that one. And then I have Claire Taylor co-writes with Brock Bloodworth, who is also me, on
with a fake mustache.
It's me with a fake mustache. On the Killhaven Police series. And that is my paranormal cop comedy series. So it's like a buddy cop series, but it's set in a very heavily paranormal world, and it's definitely rated R. I can only describe it as a stank nasty series. So it's a lot of fun. It's over the top. I have 4 books out in that one, and that kind of completes the first set. I do plan on writing a second set in a couple years once I can get to it on my list. And then I write as Nova Nelson as well, and that's a paranormal cozy mystery name. And I have a 13-book series in that, The East Wind Witches. And then I have like a 3-book spinoff series. And then I've started writing in a shared world with some other authors, and it's a magical Renaissance fair mystery. So that's really fun because I'm a total Renaissance fair
you do
nerd.
Renaissance fairs, don't you?
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think I've seen some social media posts.
I know you may not expect it, but that is one of my deepest pleasures in life, is going to the Renaissance fair and just letting loose. But anyway, so that's a series for Nova Nelson. I'm trying to think, is there anything else for her? No, not really. I have another book coming out in the Magical Renaissance Fair in the next few months. And then because that wasn't enough, I started a crime fiction pen name.
Okay.
So I'm currently working on revisions for book 3 of the Dana Capone series. I write as Claire Feeney for that name. So that is female detective hunting serial killers. And I, basically was like, if I don't put all this true crime knowledge to use productively, I'm going to have to turn myself in for something. So that is what I write. And I think I have a novella and 2 books out in that pen name because it's fairly new. And then we're just going to keep on rocking with that.
But speaking of true crime, you also have sort of access to somebody who works in the field, right?
Yeah, my husband's a police officer, and he's about to promote to detective in a few months.
Congratulations! Give him my congrats.
Yeah, I will. That was a whole thing, studying for the detective exam.
I can imagine.
But yeah, he's done, so our marriage can resume. But yeah, he is a huge help. I used him extensively for Killhaven Police, and that was a interesting new phase in our relationship because he is not a writer. He's a reader for sure.
Right.
But I would give him these books and say, just let me know if anything seems like too, unforgivable as far as procedure goes, right? Like, we don't want to make the good guys the bad guys here by having them act crazy. And so he would get very detailed, and I would take some of it, and then I would say, okay, but like, they're also werewolves, so maybe I don't have to be 100% accurate here. I can.
Yeah, he's like, but that uniform wouldn't work for a werewolf.
Right. I'm like, well, they did just shift on duty, so they're all naked now. I don't know. I'm sure that violates policy
somewhere.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have your badge on you.
Right. So that's fun, and he's helping me with the Dana Capone series as well. I'm making him read all of those.
So hang on a second. So like all the different series you're writing, and you're doing the story alignment and helping authors, and you're doing the weekly podcast. Does Claire Taylor sleep, or what do you sacrifice in order to get all these things done?
Well, this is all I have to do, and it's been over years. I know it sounds like a lot now, but it's, I've been doing this full time since like May 2015. Okay. So it's been a lot of years. And I did used to work a lot more. I would work over the weekend and I would do that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I just don't care as much anymore. I don't know.
Well, you also give yourself time. Like I know you and Brian talk about that a lot, which is really important.
Yes, I have learned the importance of rest. I was a chronic overachiever when I was younger, and it just wore me down, and it just wasn't fun anymore. And I thought, well, I should have some fun. I should do things other than writing, because when you make your whole life about your career, if one little thing goes wrong in your career, then suddenly your whole life is thrown around. But if you have all these other things, so it's almost like a security purpose of this. I've developed my social life, and I have my marriage and my dogs and, neighbors and sports and books and all these different things that I like to do, that if something goes wrong in work, it's like, all right, whatever, I'll just, I'll forget about it and go do one of these other things that I love to do. So that has been an important step for me. And I'm not as productive as I used to be. That is the hit that you take, but right. I feel healthier and I enjoy my writing more now.
You also do something that I find very entertaining and enlightening, and sometimes funny, sometimes thoughtful. One of the things that you did, like social media, was waffling. Where did that come from? And can you just describe that to my listeners, please?
Oh boy. Okay. So this started as a joke gone wrong. I think this must have been like 2015, 2016. I posted some Facebook joke about how I was going to start a show where I waffle on things and eat waffles, and it's going to be called The Waffling. And people liked it a little bit too much. And so while I don't usually give in to peer pressure, I can be a little bit into performing. So I was like, okay, we'll give this a shot. And so the waffling is me sitting in front of my computer, which generally has a very low quality camera, alone by myself, eating waffles and drinking a beverage, always drinking, Mark, and waffling on topics that are just randomly selected. People will suggest them, or I'll do a theme or something like that. So that is the waffling, and it has evolved. It has spiraled over the years. So yeah, that's something I just get like a wild hair to go do that sometimes.
I thought that was so fun. But then even for a while, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen any recently, but you know how social media is. Sometimes you see things, sometimes you don't. You would do these walk and talks where you would just talk about a topic. Yeah. You
the
still
hot
doing
walks. Well, it's a little chilly lately. But yeah, I sometimes do cool walks, chill walks. But Yeah. So the hot walks was just something I started because I was so bored because I was trying to get my 10,000 steps a day to win these stupid Fitbit competitions, stupid indie author Fitbit competitions. And I think at the time that I started it, Brian Cohen and I were like locked in heated competition. And I don't let myself engage in competition because I will destroy myself trying to win. So that's usually why I avoid it. But anyway, so I go on these 1.5 hour walks out in the Texas heat. It's usually over 100 degrees and I'm burning up because, if people are just listening to this, I am very pale. So I was not made for that. But yeah, just walking and just kind of being a loser. I don't know how else to describe being a loser who rants about things I have no business ranting about. And then I started doing that during the pandemic when it first started and we were like, all right, 2 weeks and we're done. I was like, cool, I'm going to do it every day. And this is going to be something that I can keep, people's spirits up with. And then I think it was after about 40 days, I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. I'm too depressed for this.
I should say we're at about the 2-year anniversary from when everything shut down for 2 weeks.
Yeah. I'm glad. If I was still doing those hot walks though, I would be skin and bones. I would have ended up in the hospital with dehydration at this point.
Well, you would need more of the waffles then.
That's true. Doctor comes in with his clipboard. You're going to need to eat a lot more waffles.
Can I ask about your publishing strategy? Are you publishing exclusive to Amazon? Are you publishing wide? What are you doing? Are you doing a bit? Yeah. Yeah,
I do both because I find that it's, sort of genre by genre, it's a little bit easier wide versus exclusive or Amazon, exclusive. And so I do want to build wide for my comedy series. I don't know that I even picked this correctly. Like maybe my comedy stuff doesn't do really great wide, but I haven't had a lot of time to really work that strategy as hard as I want. But yeah, that is, so my Paranormal Police and my, Killhaven Police and Jessica Christ are wide. My cozy mystery, my paranormal cozy mystery is in Kindle Unlimited. I don't know that there's a really great way to sell paranormal cozy. Like it kind of is a genre that started in KU. Right. And so I've just kept it there. It's doing well enough where I'm like, this allows me to have the other stuff wide and to work that and get that going in the meantime. Right. And then for now, my crime fiction is Kindle Unlimited, but I think that would be a really easy one to get going wide. So I think I'll probably do that soon.
Okay, cool. Interesting. Thank you. So the one last thing I wanted to talk to you about was there was an interesting article and a very enlightening, eye-opening article, especially for me, who probably doesn't have to worry about certain things, given my size and my heterosexual cis white gen privilege. But it was called Indie Publishing Has a Creep Problem. And a lot of people have reacted to that in different ways. Can you talk a little bit about that and what was the genesis for publishing that article?
Yeah, the genesis was I reached my breaking point, I think. But also we are at a point where we didn't have a lot of in-person events for a long time, and now they're starting. And I think this is a really good time for us to reconsider how we rebuild things that have sort of been upended. So it felt like the right time for it. And I had just heard too many stories of women being the subject of male predation at events. But even when the events weren't happening, it was still happening on podcasts. It was happening in DMs. It was happening in groups. It can happen online. It's usually not as physically scary for a woman when there is that computer. Even if, I've had death threats through the computer and I just laugh it off and I'm like, okay, whatever, but if someone came up to me and threatened to kill me, it would be a different thing, right? Because, so there's the emotional safety, there's the physical safety element, but we are sort of entering back in, and I don't have any tolerance for it. I think that we're so far past it, and it's just unbearable to my soul to hear so many women and all kinds of people. It's less about gender than it really is about power. But because of the way power is distributed, it tends to be about gender.
Right.
So, all kinds of people who are facing this, and not just the creepiness, but, actual threats and unsafe situations that women find themselves in, men not taking no for an answer, and then preying on women in all different kinds of ways, right? Because when you have any group that predominantly, has the power, they're going to make offers to the people who do not have as much power, offers of sharing power or bestowing or gifting power. Right. And it is really hard to tell the difference between altruism and predation sometimes. And so that is something that I think we really need to face in this community. And I know it's not unique to this community, but indie publishing is small enough that I really believe that we have enough emotionally intelligent and smart and caring people and creative thinkers in this, that we could come up with a cultural solution for our little corner of the world that is something that can inspire other places. Like, we are small enough to actually affect change that we haven't seen in a lot of arenas. So that is why I'm kind of going for it now. And I guess, I don't know, maybe I didn't have enough on my plate at the time.
No kidding. Well, it's certainly gotten a lot of people talking, which I think is really important. We need to talk about this. So I guess, and this becomes a little bit uncomfortable for me because I am in a position of power. I'm a very large, kind of scary looking man. And when I read the article, you talked about a particular incident that happened to you, but I read it and said, well, that could be me, because you don't name names. Mm-hmm. You're very, not going to name names. Not about the names. Yeah. It's about what's happening in our industry and in the world in general. But I read that and I started thinking, okay, wow, I may have even been there. Why didn't I see something, or why didn't I notice? And what can I do? Are there things I can do to help or to put a stop to this? Or like, what are the things that, men who are willing to listen and watch for? What are some of the things that we can do to help out?
Well, I'm not an expert in this, right? I don't have any sort of certification or degree. I just have my own experience. And speaking from my experience, I see this as, it's important that, first of all, that men are aware that this is happening. It's not going to be reported. There is no system of accountability that will make reporting it worth the headache. Right. That is why women don't report this kind of thing. Low level, it's like, so in the article, it describes an author giving me sort of an unbidden kiss on the neck at the end of a, get together. And someone said, why didn't she report this to the police? I was like, well, first of all, I did. I told my husband about it, but
so he's a police officer.
Yeah.
But again, what's the trend? I mean, it's, yeah, that's a weird one because it's so subtle, right?
Right. That it's not illegal, really. What's going to be done about it? Nothing can be done. And when I told my husband that someone had said that, he laughed because he knows that there is no system in place to deal with that kind in the world and in our community. So I think the important thing is just letting people know that this is happening. And the people like you who really care about it and who have been affected by this and really want to know, in good faith, asking, what can I do? The answer is start to develop the sixth sense that all women have had to develop. Start to notice, we are on high alert in these situations generally. And when we let our guard down even for a second, that's when these kinds of things happen. So it would just be nice to know that if we let our guard down, there might be someone else that can pick up on this. Another thing is just checking in. Like, if you see a man cornering a woman at an event, or you see, maybe it doesn't look like he's physically cornering her, but he's talking to her and her body language just seems kind of off. Or even if it doesn't seem off, you can just go interrupt that conversation if it's in a public space. That is what I do a lot. If I see a woman that I know, or even that I don't know, who's looking very uncomfortable, sometimes I'll just go up and introduce myself, because my fear of seeming awkward is less important than the possibility of her being in a bad situation that I haven't intervened in. So that is, and just to introduce yourself, insert yourself in the conversation, and finding ways to give her a good excuse to leave if she wants.
Right.
I think it's important to note that I would never, and I think most of the women I know would never fault a man for being overly cautious on this front.
Right.
If you're, if a man is moderating a panel and there's, women and men on this panel, and the man says something that just seems off or just seems rude, just stepping in and saying, wait, hold on, that seems inappropriate. You may not know what to say next. You may not know what to call that kind of inappropriateness. You're like, I don't know if that's gaslighting or if that's this other term that I heard once. You can just say, hold on, and just stop and call it out as inappropriate. And then you can figure it out from there and take that risk of stepping in before you know exactly how to do it. I personally would be so grateful and relieved that someone saw it, because I guarantee you the women affected by it see it and the women watching it see it. And so it sends a very strong message that this is a place where you don't have to worry about that. And that's a person who's going to have your back.
So just so I can ensure that I'm interpreting this, because again, it all goes through the filters of your own experiences, et cetera. And I have not had or witnessed or been aware of certain experiences. So in a case where I suspect potentially that someone may not be comfortable in a situation, even if they don't look like they're being cornered, you're not saying, hey, I'm going to go up and punch a guy because I think he's a creep.
Oh, God.
You're going to insert yourself, like, no, but because men are like, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to power him up. It's more of a, hey, just kind of work your way into the conversation politely. And it's not a situation that has to be really uncomfortable for yourself and other people. But if it's a situation, it gives the woman or person in question who is feeling cornered, it gives them an opportunity to, I have to go to the restroom, or I'm going to go, oh, I just saw someone I need to go talk to. It gives them a perfect excuse without anyone having to feel uncomfortable. That's kind of what you're saying. And the same thing on the panel. I don't know what to say, but I just don't feel good right now. This feels weird. I want to stop this line of questioning, or I want to, I object. Like it's one of those things, right?
And if you miss an opportunity, if your gut said, I should have said something, go talk to her later and just say, I'm sorry, I didn't say something. Or are you okay?
Oh, because you recognized maybe 2 minutes after you went, wait a second. Yeah, because sometimes my brain works that way.
Yeah, mine too. Oh, mine too.
After the fact, and go, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it's a humbling experience to have to admit that you missed that, and that someone went through something because you weren't aware of it.
Right.
But it's okay to be humbled, and it's okay to not be perfect in this, because it's about improving. And I just think that, yes, some people will snap at you for not having been there. But you can handle that, right? You put on your big kid pants and you do the right thing. But most people are just really grateful that somebody recognized it, because a thing that women are programmed to do is to diminish the experience and to gaslight ourselves. Sometimes it's easier to tell ourselves it wasn't that big of a deal than to admit and that it was a big deal, and then feel that anger of the boundary infringement and not have a place to put it. So there's a lot going on, and just having someone come up and say, hey, I saw that was really inappropriate. I'm so sorry. I will step in next time. I just was too slow on it. That would mean the world to me. That would just be like, oh, this is, at least I'm not alone, and I can stop this sort of need to either invalidate or validate my experience.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm seeing a pattern. I don't know if it's one of your angiogram types or whatever, but the pattern that you seem to be willing to stick your neck out for the betterment of other authors. I'm detecting a pattern in there.
Oh, for me?
Yeah, you seem to be willing, right? Because you do a lot for authors, for the podcast and for FFS Media, and even this article. The idea is like, I need to do something to help other people, because you put yourself on the line, right? You either your own writing time or even the fact that, people are going to talk about this, and maybe people are going to say negative things about the person who brought this to light.
Yeah, maybe they will. Yeah. So you actually have picked up on my Enneagram type, Mark. I am a type 1, the reformer, and our core fear is all about being bad or corrupt, and our desire is to be good and to do the right thing. And in doing my Enneagram work and accepting that was my type, I realized what will make me feel better in a situation. Going in and doing the right thing, even if it's unpopular, I know that at the end of the day, that's going to give me much more emotional satisfaction than doing what is popular and ignoring what the right thing to do is. So, I believe that to be good, you help other people. And that when I'm on my deathbed, the things I'm not going to worry about are people's opinion of me and email. Those are the 2 things I'm not going to worry about.
Awesome. Claire, thank you so much for such a lively and engaging conversation, thought-provoking, fun. Can you please let my listeners know where they can find out more about you, your writing, your story alignment, etc.?
Yeah, so it is all at ffs.media. That is the website, and you'll go there, and it asks you if you're a reader or a writer, so it walks you through it. But it's all there. All of my fiction is there.
What if I'm both?
What if you're? Oh no!
What do I do?
You must choose, Mark.
Oh no, I don't know. What if I make the wrong decision, Claire?
That's it. You're going to live with that forever. There are ways to navigate my website, so that is helpful. But yeah, so all my fiction's there. All of my author services are there, and you can connect with me on Facebook. You can connect with me. I have ffs.media is my Instagram account. You can, wherever you are, I'm there. So I would love to chat with people. Oh, and I have a free course. So I have the free.
Oh, yes, please tell us.
I always forget that I have this. So I have a free 5-day indie author Supercharge course. And this is 5 days of using the Enneagram to start to build your author strategy. So we talk about creative values and what matters to you, like what I was talking about with my, why I do all of this stuff, figuring out what matters to you and what's going to fill you up. And then we go down into persona, what persona you can bring and sort of shine. A lot of people don't realize what they're bringing. And it's just like, no, this is this great thing you have, bring it. And then we talk about themes. So we talk about themes in your story that are really going to matter to you, and how to find themes that really resonate with your type and your values, and to write to those, because that's fuel right there. And then protagonists, how to write certain types of protagonists. And so we align all of that so that your whole career has a nice tailored, sort of feel to you and your type and your motivation.
Is this a self-serve, or is it like you're there live and I have to do it at a certain time?
It's self-serve. So anyone can sign up. Yes.
Oh, so cool. Awesome.
And that is ffs.media/5-day. So 5, the number, and then day.
Well, I know what I'm signing up for. Claire, thank you so much for hanging out with me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure, always a good time.
So much to reflect on in that interview with Claire. A couple things. So I am going to be taking the free 5-day Supercharged course. I'm pretty excited about doing that. I love that it's self-directed. And of course, the last topic that we spoke about, or not the last topic we spoke about before we kind of wrapped up the conversation, was the creep problem. And ever since I read it, I've been reflecting on it a lot, and I've been talking to as many people as I can, especially women who are in the industry, and just trying to better understand the things I don't properly understand. And I'm really grateful and thankful that so many folks are taking the time to share their perspective with me, to help me better understand the situations that women find themselves in, etc. But reflecting specifically on something Claire said, especially when we talked about, what can we do for those of us who recognize, this is a problem, or I'm going to pay more attention to it. And it is, when she said, my fear of seeming awkward in a situation is less important than the possibility of a woman being in a bad situation that I haven't intervened in. And that really stuck with me. Like, you don't want to. Oftentimes, I'm not that bold. I don't like confrontation. I don't do confrontation well. And so when I see a situation and I feel my adrenaline running because I think, oh no, this is something I should do something about, because that instinct has come in. I'm not a violent person, and I'm not I'm not good at confrontation. But I have to remind myself, if I see something and I think, oh wow, maybe she's uncomfortable in that situation. I've got to come up with ways to just go and maybe introduce myself or say hi or swing by and just get in there. Because my discomfort at looking awkward and goofy and whatever it is far, far less important than what might actually be happening. And if nothing's happening, then fine. It's just a friendly encounter. Hey, just thought I'd swing by and say blah or whatever. It doesn't matter. All it is this would give the person who may or may not be cornered an opportunity, an out, a good excuse to leave. It's sort of an interjection. And if that's the case, great. Nothing dramatic has to happen. They were removed from the situation. And if it's a situation where I was mistaken and everything's fine and copacetic between the two people and everything's good, then okay, and maybe I embarrassed myself or made a fool of myself or I was awkward. I can live with that. I'm awkward all the time. I'm used to it. So really, it's not all that bad. So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about and reflecting about as I, prepare to go to some more in-person events. There's going to be more of them. I've just been invited to another one here in Canada. I'm going to be speaking at in the West Coast. And the next big one I'm going to be at is Pikes Peak Writers Conference in April in Colorado Springs again. So again, just paying attention, just being aware. And even as some of the women I've been speaking with recently have said, sometimes you're just not paying attention to that spidey sense or that sort of sixth sense. I think Claire mentioned it as, that tells you maybe something's wrong here. So that's something I'm reflecting on. The other thing, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is I initially thought I would play after our interview. I'd asked Claire if she could read the article that she had written on Medium, that indie publishing has a creep problem. Because I know that it's a 14-minute article, and it could be a long bit of text for people to read, but maybe podcast listeners who maybe don't go and click the links and don't want to go over there, this will give them an opportunity to listen to it. But because this episode's already over an hour or close to an hour or something like that, I'm somewhere in that realm, I didn't want to push it that extra 15 minutes, but I also wanted to make sure that people have access to it. So I'm doing a special episode 241, which is going to be very little of me talking, because the reflection is the whole episode itself, and it's Claire's reflection. And I wanted to use my platform to help propel and amplify her voice, because I think that's as important, rather than hearing my take and my reflection on it, hearing Claire's. And so the very next episode, 241, is going to be Claire's voice, mostly. You'll just hear a little bit of me. For those who don't listen to every episode, you just hear a little bit of me explaining why I'm doing that for that episode. And that's going to be that episode. And it'll probably only be about 15 to maybe 18 minutes, somewhere in there. It might be a little bit longer, depending on the length of the read, etc. But that is it for episode 240. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I did mention I have a sponsor and I have awesome patrons who support this podcast, but you do not have to support the podcast. You can continue to listen to it for free, and I want it to always be free for everyone, and I love that about this. But if you want to support the podcast, there's a couple things you can do that doesn't cost you any money, you can leave a review for this podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. And I greatly, greatly appreciate the reviews because that helps other people discover it. And speaking of helping other people discover it, if you enjoy this podcast, feel free, please, to share it with a friend that you think would find value. So again, as I mentioned, that's it for episode 240 of the Stark Reflections podcast. And so until next episode, which will probably be episode 241, because I can count. Yes, I don't even need to take my shoes and socks off to figure that one out. So until episode 241, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.